Hi, everybody. My name is Marina Ferguson, and I am a mortician. Some things that I wanted to start out saying is that mortician or undertaker is kind of vintage terms, more common phrases of what my career consists of. You'll hear people say embalmer or funeral director. There is a difference. Embalmers are the people who prep the bodies and do mostly all of the anatomy type things. And then a funeral director strictly just arranges the services and helps the families with the service. You can become both, or you also have the option in the state of Kentucky to do either one. To get into that, the route that I took was I went to school. School has been about 2 years for me. I've taken some breaks, so it could be a shorter amount of time if you choose to do school. But after you graduate, you actually are not a licensed mortician. You have to go through the state of Kentucky for a 12-month apprenticeship. So you have to work directly underneath of a embalmer or funeral director who is licensed. You have to do that for 12 months. If you choose not to go to school, you can do an apprenticeship right off the bat if someone is willing to help you with that. And typically that is 3 years. So you're going to be working in a funeral home 40 hours a week for 3 years. There are some differences if you choose to do just funeral directing. I would always say go ahead, do both, because the funeral industry is so big and you want to have as many options as you can. So that way, if later on down the road you say, oh man, I really wish that I could do the anatomy type portion, then you have that option and you're licensed for both. So I know you all had some questions. I will try my best to answer those. Some of them wanted to know some bizarre ways people had passed, but I will try my best to explain that, but also be discreet because I want to be as respectful as possible to the deceased. Another point that I wanted to bring that I don't think was asked is this job is very, very professional. I have piercings, I have tattoos that cover my entire body, but when you are working in the funeral industry, none of that can show. You have to think that there are a lot of elderly people, there are sick people, and yeah, of course, piercings and tattoos are becoming more common, but we also try to be as respectful as possible and dress accordingly. So business suits, dresses, hosiery, still kind of in the past is how we want to dress. It's not as casual as if maybe working at a bank. So let's start off with your questions. One that was really common is why I wanted to become a mortician. So I have always felt empathetic to people. I am a natural caretaker, and I've worked in the medical field for about 9 years, and I've realized that morticians, it takes a different type of person to do that job. I've suffered a lot of loss in my life, friends, family, starting from a young age. So I don't know if that maybe made me strong enough to want to do this job, but I just like to help the grieving families and be that support. And also, since I've worked in medical, I really enjoy the whole process of everything, the anatomy of the body, and of course the wonder of what happens in the afterlife. So I just felt not really like woke up one day like I want to be a mortician and this seems really cool. It just seems like I had a pull to do that job. Like maybe that's my purpose. Someone had asked if it was hard for me to touch my first deceased body. The first person that I had ever felt that had passed away was a relative. So I think that made it a little bit easier. But then again, the first person that I actually had to touch was when I worked at a mortuary, and they said, okay, go ahead and wash this body. And this was a complete stranger. So it was a little nerve-wracking at first to give a sponge bath to someone who is not alive. And they feel different, of course. They're not warm. Their skin can feel different after they've been embalmed. So I was a little nervous, but once you get the nerves out of your body, realize that you're there for a job, and think of them as a normal person, the job does become a little bit easier. How many bodies do morticians process in a year? That all depends. I've worked for a smaller funeral home, and I think last year we did 136 bodies. I've also worked for a mortuary. There is a big one that is in Louisville. It processes for about 12 funeral homes and all of Jefferson County, so all of the coroner's cases, and they will do thousands of bodies. They do embalmings for autopsies, they do cremations, and then they also do the original embalming, prepping, casketing to go to funeral services. Let's see. Was I scared to do my job, or did it make me nervous? Yes. I remember my first week that I was at the mortuary. Not to sound too terrible, but it's almost like you're walking into a butcher shop for humans. There are bodies laying out on cots all over the place. There are bodies waiting to be cremated. There are freezers full of bodies. I mean, you are just pretty much zigzagging through an entire warehouse of bodies. You never know what you're going to walk into. So I was very nervous for that. The other thing that made me nervous is I worked underneath of an embalmer. He's 70 years old. He's been doing it for a long time. And he said, okay, go ahead and get this body prepped. And he walked out of the room. So there I was working on my body while also having a couple others on the table, and it was dead silent. Made me nervous. Luckily, I was by myself, so I turned on the radio, stuck to my job, and out of sight, out of mind. And it does get easier. I know that someone had asked, are you ever afraid that the bodies are gonna move? I have been working on a body before, and my hair had fallen, and I thought, oh my gosh, did she just move? No, it was totally my mind. If you're going to be afraid of anyone, it's definitely not the dead. They are not going to hurt you. They're not going to move on you. Living people are the ones that you have to be more afraid of. Okay. Someone asked how much a service cost. So funerals can cost anywhere from $1,500 to $15,000. It depends on what exactly they want to do. If someone decides that they want to do a direct cremation, that's usually about $1,500. If someone needs to be embalmed, that cost. If there is a service, you have to think of, using the chapel of the funeral home, how many days you're doing visitation, plus the service. There's a cost for the hearse. There's a cost for your grave plot, your headstone, your casket. All of those prices range. Even if you are cremated, if someone doesn't want to be put into a mausoleum, which does cost, then you're going to have the cost of the urn. So there is definitely a range of cost. It's a broad span. Really, it's just how much you want to go into it. Uh, let's see. I'm trying to get all of your questions here. What was the strangest thing I've ever found in a body? I personally haven't found anything strange. Of course, before anyone's cremated, you have to take out pacemakers because those can explode. The only thing that was kind of bizarre or interesting to me was I dealt with a suicide case, and when I had picked up the body, they gave me a bag of her belongings, and then inside of the bag was the object that she had used. So I thought, is this necessary that I need to take this with me? And it also just kind of gave me a mental image that I don't know I really wanted to have. Okay, if a death doesn't occur in the home, what happens? Typically, if a death isn't at a rehab, nursing home, or in a person's home, what we'll do is we will either go to the scene. Coroners are always called. So we'll go to the scene, we'll meet with the coroner, we'll pick up the body. There's also a place, it's the medical examiner's office. People who need to be autopsied all go there. So we will go to the ME's office and we'll pick them up from there. Did I want to be a mortician for the money? No. Morticians do not make a lot of money. When I first started out, I was transporting bodies. I was in a prep room at the mortuary and I made $12 an hour. So I did not want to be in this profession because of the money. Is this job for everyone? No, it's not. If you cannot deal with horrific sights, if you cannot deal with smells, the job's not for you. Another thing is that I've personally struggled with is the mental portion of the job. When you're around death and sadness every day, all day, it is very hard to remember that you are still alive. You need to make your physical body being here on earth count. You have to remember to do things that make you happy and find joy and not to bring your work home with you. I have been around families, they've asked me to bring their loved ones back. They have been crying, sobbing because they're identifying their person. I've seen death of children, babies, and that's a lot for somebody. I'm not gonna lie, I've had nightmares. I can still picture almost every single person that I've processed. So if you struggle with depression, anxiety, anything of that nature, you probably don't want to be in the funeral industry unless you can, again, put that in the back of your mind. What happens to organs if a person passes? So, of course, you all probably know that you can donate your organs. If someone does not donate their organs during an autopsy, we do take all of those out. They are covered in embalming or cavity fluid, and everything is put back into them. They're buried with it. Even just normal embalmed bodies, they're all buried with their organs. So we don't remove anything. We don't take anything out. We don't throw anything away. What you have is what you're buried with. Let's see. What kind of funeral home did I work for? So I am a first generation mortician, which means no one in my family has worked in the funeral industry. I know when I first told my dad that I was going to school for this, he said, I never thought I'd have a daughter that grew up to be a mortician. And I thought, I don't think anyone really does. But I have worked in funeral homes where it is a family business. The father owned it, the daughter worked there. And a lot of funeral homes are becoming more corporate now. So big corporations will come in, they'll buy family-owned funeral homes, and it just becomes more of a business. Personally, I don't like that. I would prefer to work for someone that is still keeping it kind of traditional. I always get asked why I do my job. I've kind of explained that to you guys, but what do people say when I tell them what I do? They always ask me, well, what made you want to do that? And isn't that weird? I couldn't do that. So yeah, I do get some strange reactions for that. Let's see. Do we know how people pass away? Yes. We are given a report, especially with COVID. So it is marked whether the person had COVID. And then you also get a death report at the end